Have you ever felt that the deeper you think, the more disconnected you become? That the more you try to understand, the less people want to engage? It's not just in your head. Throughout history, society has always feared those who think deeply. Not because they are wrong, but because they see what others aren't ready to confront. This pattern stretches from the time of ancient philosophers to the modern era. Brilliant minds have been rejected, silenced, or ignored. Not because their ideas were wrong, but because they made people uncomfortable. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once suggested that great thinkers are often misunderstood, not because their ideas are false, but because they dare to challenge the comfortable truths that most people live by. Why does this happen? Why does society resist those who think outside the norm? The answer might be more deeply rooted in our psychology than we think. Consider this. When you encounter someone who is physically strong, you don't necessarily feel weak. You admire their strength. When you meet someone who is wealthy, you might even envy them, but it doesn't make you question your own worth. However, when you meet someone whose mind operates on a deeper level, something strange occurs. Psychologists refer to this as the discomfort of disparity. Deep thinkers don't just offer new ideas, they challenge existing ones, and in doing so, they inadvertently shine a light on the gaps in understanding of those around them. And people don't easily forgive that. Why does this happen? Why does intelligence provoke such a strong reaction? To understand, we need to explore how our minds react to superiority. When someone is physically stronger, we see them as a protector or a leader. When someone is wealthier, we might admire their success or aspire to similar achievements. These qualities, strength, wealth, and beauty, are external. We recognize them, but they don't challenge the core of who we are. Intelligence is different. Unlike physical traits or wealth, intelligence is tied directly to our identity. We define ourselves by our thoughts, beliefs, and understanding of the world. So when we meet someone who thinks on a deeper level, someone who questions what we've always accepted, it can feel like a direct attack on our own sense of self. It's not just that we admire them, it's that we feel uncomfortable with what they reveal about our own limitations. This is why deep thinkers often find themselves on the fringes of society. Their ideas challenge not just beliefs, but egos. And human beings by nature do whatever they can to protect their sense of self. The very presence of a deep thinker forces others to reflect on their own limitations, and that's not easy to accept.
Think about your own experiences. Have you ever tried to bring up a complex or deep idea in a casual conversation, only to be met with a blank stare or an awkward silence? Have you noticed how people quickly change the topic when the discussion moves beyond surface-level chatter? This isn't a coincidence. It's a defense mechanism. When confronted with someone who thinks deeply, many people's minds instinctively go into a protective mode. Instead of engaging with curiosity, they resist. Instead of considering new ideas, they dismiss them. This is why intellectuals and philosophers often end up feeling isolated, not because they lack social skills, but because their intelligence makes them stand out in a society that values fitting in over standing out. Here's the paradox of intelligence. The more someone seeks truth, the more they are disconnected from the majority. It's not that deep thinkers want to be alone, it's that society tends to push them away. And if you think about it, it's not just a social or psychological issue, it's biological too. Human brains evolved to thrive in social groups. In ancient times, being cast out of the tribe could mean death. Our ancestors needed the group for survival. The need for social acceptance is hardwired into us. So when a deep thinker enters a social setting, they inadvertently disrupt the group's dynamic, triggering a primal fear response. This isn't just about intelligence, it's about the survival instinct. But there's more. Recent studies in neuroscience support this idea. When people feel intellectually inferior, the brain's amygdala, the region responsible for fear and threat detection, becomes highly active. This primal response makes deep thinkers seem threatening, even when they haven't said a word. It's as if the brain is reacting to a physical threat. Why does this happen? Historically, survival was more about fitting in than standing out. For most of human history, if you didn't conform to the group, you were at risk. So when someone highly intelligent enters a social setting, their mere presence challenges that balance. Their ideas and understanding challenge the status quo. The brain interprets this as a potential threat. Let's go deeper. A 2021 study showed that people often feel less threatened by deep thinkers in one-on-one conversations, but in group settings, the reaction is much stronger. Why? Social status becomes more important in groups. People are more likely to react not to intelligence itself, but to how their own status might be affected by it. If they feel outshined or less intelligent, they instinctively try to undermine or exclude the deep thinker to protect their own position. This is why many deep thinkers find themselves having enriching conversations in private settings, but struggle to engage in larger, more public environments. It's not a lack of social skills. It's a reaction to being seen as different.
Why does this resistance to deep thinking exist? There are cognitive biases at play. The Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with less knowledge often overestimate their abilities, while those with more knowledge tend to doubt themselves. This creates friction. People who know less often dismiss those who know more because it challenges their own perception of their intelligence. Additionally, people are often more comfortable with familiar ideas, what's known as status quo bias. New, disruptive ideas, especially those from deep thinkers, are uncomfortable. They force people to reconsider their views, and that's not always easy. The backfire effect occurs when people are presented with ideas that contradict their beliefs. Instead of changing their minds, they double down on what they know. In the digital age, social media amplifies this rejection of intelligence. Algorithms prioritize content that generates strong reactions, often simple, catchy, or emotionally charged, rather than content that challenges the status quo in a thoughtful, nuanced way. As a result, viral content often outweighs well-reasoned arguments. What does this mean for deep thinkers? The rejection of intelligence is not just a social issue. It's a deep biological and cultural issue that goes back to our evolutionary roots. And while it's important to share ideas, it's equally important for deep thinkers to recognize the forces working against them. So, if society resists intelligence, what does it embrace? Comfort. The world often prefers predictability over truth. Many people would rather hold on to familiar, comforting ideas than confront difficult truths. The paradox is clear. The smarter you are, the more you risk being isolated. But this isolation isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're seeing things others aren't ready to.